Welcome to Dr. Roger and Friends, the bright side of longevity, hosted by three Ps in a podcast, Doc Roger, Teresa, and Danielle. Thanks for joining us for coffee and conversation.
Well, welcome everybody. This is part 2 of our session with Linda Sasser. Linda is the guru of memory, and she has spoken at our annual conferences. She is on our speakers bureau, and she is a fantastic speaker. But the important thing is that she knows so much about the brain, particularly in areas that we all tend to worry about. And I hope you heard part 1 of our podcast, but Linda's back. Thank you, Linda, for being with us again for a second part to this and get some more information. Teresa and Danielle, good to see you again. Linda, I spent a career in the Air Force, a lot of noise, and I have hearing impairment. Also, thanks to a young Marine who threw a grenade simulator at me. And I know that is related to cognitive function and cognitive decline. Could we hear about that? Could you tell us more about that?
Yes, I would love to, because it is really important. Sometimes paying attention becomes more difficult for older adults because our perception tends to be reduced, especially vision and hearing. If a person can't see or hear information, it can't be remembered. And there is a correlation between hearing and cognitive function. Researchers have actually found that compared to participants without hearing loss, cognitive decline was 30% higher for people with mild hearing loss, 42% higher for people with moderate hearing loss, and 54% higher for people with severe hearing loss. And so these findings, and there have been many studies about it, show that hearing loss can substantially increase the risk of cognitive decline, and that the degree of hearing loss heightens the risk. And actually, this reminds me when I did the presentation for Masterpiece Living about social isolation and loneliness and their impact on cognitive health. One of the ways that hearing loss affects cognitive health is that people that don't hear well, they withdraw from social interaction. Actually, that reminds me of a neighbor I have here across the street. She never comes to the block parties or anything. She says she has such trouble hearing. It's just difficult for her to communicate with people. And so she kind of stays in her house by herself, which we know social isolation is not good for brain health either. And a lot of older adults are reluctant to get hearing aids, sometimes because of cost. One woman in particular just kept putting it off. And finally, she did get some hearing aids. And when she went to her audiologist for a checkup, he said, "Oh, your family must be so pleased that you can hear them now." And she said, "Oh, I haven't told anyone. I've just been sitting around listening, and I've changed my will 3 times.
Oh, that's priceless.
I love it. Well, you got my attention.
Yeah.
I have hearing aids, but it's like the thing about reservation. You can make a reservation, you have to keep the reservation. Well, you can get the hearing aids, you have to wear the hearing aids. And so thank you for that. And my wife will be very happy that you said that.
So, Linda, can you explain why I hear someone's name or phone number, and before I write it down, it's like disappeared from my brain? What is that about?
Well, there's a couple reasons. One, the first possible reason would be that you may not have been paying sufficient attention to it when hearing it to encode it in memory. Everything in our environment, everything we see, hear, smell, taste, and touch enters our sensory memory, right? Senses. Everything is constantly hitting your brain for a brief time, 2 to 3 seconds. We're not even aware this is happening. But what has to happen is we have to pay attention to something and grab onto it for it to move on for further processing. And we call that short-term memory. And most people, this is one of the most, I still remember in graduate school when I learned about short-term memory and the limited capacity it has. And I love to tell people about this because it sort of makes us go, oh, I guess I'm normal. This isn't frustrating. It's just the way the brain works. Our short-term memory has a limited capacity. First of all, things in short-term memory only stay there about 20 or 30 seconds unless you do something. You encode it, you use a strategy to memorize it, you write it down. Otherwise, it's gone. You hear it and it's gone. It's continually, information's coming in and it fades. And the other interesting thing about short-term memory is it only holds 7 plus or minus 2 pieces of information, items. And I love that phrase, 7 plus or minus 2. It was a research paper done by Miller back in the 50s. And basically it means 5 to 9. Okay, so picture a capacity of 5 to 9 items. Actually, let's do a demonstration. Is that okay?
I was afraid she was going to say that.
Yeah.
It's simple. I'm just going to say a 7-digit phone number. I'll say it slowly. And I want you to listen to it, pay attention, right? And then when I'm done, say it back or write it down, whichever you prefer. Are we ready?
Okay.
7, 4, 9, 3, 6, 8, 1.
7493681.
Perfect. Yeah. Most people do fine with that. A few might invert, rearrange 2 of the digits, but most people can handle that one. Now we're going to try it again with a longer one with an area code. I want you to just do your best, but I guarantee you're going to feel something happen.
This one.
What?
Danielle, you answer this one.
No pressure. Can I write it down as she's saying it?
No, that's cheating. I guarantee you're going to feel something happen in your brain. Okay. Ready? 5, 0, 2, 8, 4, 3, 1, 7, 9, 6.
Okay. I wrote it down in an opposite order. 502, 843, 1796.
Yes.
That's what I got too.
But
it was harder.
Yeah.
Much harder.
And what happened was somehow the 502 stuck. And then when you went to when I wrote it down, I wrote 843, 1796, and then went back and added the area code. So I actually wrote it in a reverse order.
And that's probably because the first 3 went into your long-term memory right away. Nothing to interfere with it. And so you sort of parked it there and focused on the rest of it. Usually people, if they struggle with this, the middle numbers get mixed up because we tend to remember the beginning and the end of a list or a series of items better than the middle.
It's interesting. I felt very optimistic about doing the first one, but knowing that 10 numbers were coming, I was very pessimistic, and that probably didn't help either.
Well, when I do this, when I do presentations, and most people will struggle with the longer string of numbers. And they could say, they're getting it. They think, okay, I've got this. And suddenly it's like overwhelming, too many. I can't, so basically I'm overloading their short-term memory capacity. And I just want people to be aware of this because there's so many times when people bombard us with information and expect us to remember it all. And we physically cannot. The brain is not a computer. We wish it were, but it's not. And so if we get too much information at once, it's kind of like a grocery bag where you're putting too many things, the paper ones, put too much in and it rips and things start falling out the bottom. Well, our short-term memory is kind of that way.
So helpful. Super
so just
helpful.
To be aware of it and get less frustrated, if that happens.
Thank you.
Masterpiece is driven by data and powered by content. Maximizing healthy longevity is achievable at all times with the right metrics and content, enabling informed decisions. Powered by Masterpiece can support your community in the critical areas of focus that drive healthy longevity for your residents, staff, and community. Learn more at mymasterpieceliving.com. We want to continue to provide information that is valuable and reliable to our listeners. We welcome your comments and suggestions for topics that are important to you. Please see the description of this episode to contact the Brightside team.
Linda, you touched on long-term memory just now. So can we dig into that a little bit? How can we store information for longer than just 30 seconds or so?
Oh, yes. And that's what I love. Another thing I love to teach people about. I actually created an acronym called PAVE, P-A-V-E, all capital letters. And that stands for 4 strategies that can help you with your memory. And I like the phrase, pave your way to a better memory. And so to introduce the first strategy, I like to have you think of a penny. Don't look at a penny, but we've all handled pennies numerous times in our lives, right? And I want you to try to visualize the face side of a penny. Whose picture is on there? Which way is he facing? Is there anything written on there? Are there numbers? And
I took the last one, so it's got to be Roger or Teresa for this one. I get a pass.
Teresa, did you go get a penny? I haven't been paying attention.
well, that's exactly, most people, unless they're coin collectors, do not have this information stored in their memory. And there's a good reason for that, because when you have a handful of coins and you want to find a penny, what do you look for?
Color, of course.
Yeah, right. You don't care whose face is on there, which way he's facing. And so I use this demonstration to help people understand why we can't recall. And it has to do with exactly what Roger said. We don't usually pay attention to that information. So it's amazing how many things we think we've forgotten when in fact we didn't pay attention enough to them in the first place to encode them in memory. So the P, I tell people, if you remember nothing else, the P in PAVE stands for pay attention.
Wow.
And as we talked about in the last podcast, as we get older, our ability to pay attention declines. So we have to work doubly hard to make sure we're focusing and paying attention to the things we need to remember.
Well, you got our attention now. So let's hear about the rest of it. What's the A?
Well, the A stands for associate. We can more easily remember information that's connected to or associated with something that's already up here, something we already know or remember. Here's an example. If you've ever been on a boat or a ship, is the port side or the starboard side the left side of the ship? Anybody know?
Left.
Yes, the port side is the left side of the ship.
And you probably have a mnemonic or something to help us remember that, huh?
It's a very simple association, but it works. Port has 4 letters, and the word left has 4 letters, right? So that's an association. Some people use acronyms like I did with PAVE. And I used to live in the Chicago area, and we used to talk about HOMES, HOMES, to recall the Great Lakes. Have you any of you heard that before?
No, I had not.
Oh, interesting.
We just sit there and only get 4 out of the 5,
Well, if you have the acronym, does that help you recall the names of all 5 of them?
It would.
No, I was going to say, so starboard is, you said the right side, port is the left. So
Yes.
if I took something like, okay, I like Peter Pan from Disney, second star to the right. So if I think starboard, second star, I think of the song. So it's can you make that kind of connection?
Sure. If that's something you know. Now, for me, I didn't follow that. Don't have that association.
No Disney lovers here? Oh, well.
Just don't remember that part of it. But if that works for you, that's perfect. Okay. And that's key. It has to be something you already know that you can connect to. Another fun one that you may or may not have learned in school. I still remember 4th grade, my teacher, when we had our art class, she taught us she introduced us to Roy G. Biv. Did you ever meet him? Well, he is basically the colors of the spectrum or rainbow in order.
Mm-hmm.
So Roy G. Biv would be
red, orange, yellow, green, blue.
Indigo, which we don't ever use except if you have enough Crayolas in your box, and violet. So, that's maybe not something that's important to remember. A more important one is fast. The stroke, people in stroke associations want all of us to remember FAST, fast.